Star Wars is a series of movies originally created by George Lucas and purchased by the Walt Disney Corporation. The franchise has been continued in such movies as The Force Awakens and also story arcs such as Rogue One. We are now talking about The Last Jedi, and we're going to try and give you a more centrist opinion for Moviefile. Unlike any other YouTube channel or any other critic or reviewer or fan, as we discuss the good, the bad, the ugly, and also the fan backlash that's surrounding the movie, and ask ourselves the question, why? Today, on this episode of Moviefile, I have with me the host of Most Force Finished podcasts and one of the biggest fans of Star Wars that I know, Mr. Brandon Ligon. So, Brandon, let's jump into it. You've seen The Last Jedi. It's an eagerly anticipated
Twice.
sequel.
Seen it twice.
Well, you have to see it twice. But it's also gotten a lot of fan backlash. Why do you think that is?
One, because I just think Star Wars fans, and or at least the majority of them, are all bitter people that probably wouldn't like anything. So there's like Star Wars is the only film franchise where the majority of people who claim they're fans of the franchise don't like 50% of the content within the franchise. Only franchise where that exists. So I just think they're always going to be angry about something. It's just whether or not it's proportionate to what it should actually be, or it's just people's own shit getting mixed up in their opinions of movies.
So in this movie, they did kind of a bit of a time jump, but they also got rid of a lot of the.
There's no time. This movie literally takes place probably moments after Force Awakens ends. Like literally.
Well, this is why a lot of this doesn't make sense, because they've gotten rid of a lot of the exposition that came from the previous movie. They kept certain elements, but they threw a lot of it out. And that was more to director Rian Johnson, who basically did that. And for most who don't know who he is, he also directed a movie such as Looper, where you had Joseph Gordon-Levitt do an amazing impression of Bruce Willis. And from this, he's taken to the internet, he's taken to Twitter, and he's also spoke about how passionate the fans are and how he feels that the fans are just, they're never happy with anything, and that what he did was because more of the fact that he wanted to bring something new and throw out a lot of the old. That was the whole kind of premise behind this movie, was deleting the past,
letting the past die,
yes,
to use the Kylo Ren. And this was definitely what happened a lot of. I mean, they killed off not even just like main characters, they killed off beloved tertiary characters, like peripheral characters, like Admiral Akbar dies in this. You don't actually see it dead, but he's dead. It was a head scratcher of all things. Like there was a lot for everything that I loved about this movie. There's probably a few things that I'm just like, why did you do that right there, that thing?
So let's go for the good at first. Let's go for the good. What do you feel that the movie did well?
Well, okay, here's what I did. I felt that it developed certain key characters very well. Like they have had the arcs for Kylo Ren and on Poe rather, are absolutely perfect. Like they clearly are at one place at the beginning, go through a change, and then by the end of it are better.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I feel like Poe kind of got positioned into a character of, you could tell that he was going to be leading the new Rebel Alliance in a sense, the rebirth of the Rebel Alliance. And you could tell with the fact where he was going from being a hothead to kind of being the one who was taking charge. You had the situation with Rey where she was learning from Luke and she was starting to try and understand who Ben was and also who Luke was, and trying to feel that there was hope in a sense, and there'll always be hope in terms of the situation itself. And her connection to Ben Solo, we got a bit more exposition on his story, who he is, why he became Kylo Ren in the first place. But there was also a lot of questionable decisions that were made that kind of defeated that as well. And you had a lot of interesting elements that made it work, but he also cut out a big chunk of the story. And if we go into the bad right now, let's talk about those bad elements and why they didn't work.
Well, my first major major complaint was the entire, I guess, C plotline of the movie, which was Finn and the new character Rose go to a casino planet to try and find somebody to break through the shield. It's a search for the MacGuffin, essentially.
Yeah, I was talking about that's the kind of the MacGuffin scene that they could have just cut a huge chunk of that out.
Yeah. No, or just not done it at all.
Yeah.
because what happened, the end result, really they could have just literally just sent them directly over to the Empire, or the First Order rather than having to go this circuitous route to end up on Snoke's Mega Star Destroyer.
And also they could have used a droid, because that's how they did it before.
Yeah, exactly. Or any other story, element that was already in there, like BB-8 could have hacked it. They could have just done it.
They kind of ignored that, didn't they? They got rid of that whole element to kind of have this extension of a story, and it kind of it convoluted the film's overall arc in a sense, because you kept jumping from one scene to the next, going from Poe's story to Finn's story to Rey's story to Ben's story, and it was jumping for all these characters, trying to give everybody a place. It was kind of the Avengers way of doing things, where the Avengers had kind of all these characters having their overarching stories to begin with in their initial films, and then you just bring them together as one big pool for the next. Where with this, it was kind of, let's give this person some exposition, let's give this person some exposition, let's give this person some exposition. And they couldn't, there were unique character arcs. Like Finn's character arc was unique in itself, but then it was useless because it had no merit. There was no reason for it to happen, there was no reason for it to be there. It was just there to give him something to do. And the worst part about it is you could tell he matured as a character from the last movie. Like, everybody has basically, you could tell they're more comfortable in their own skin. Rey's character, performed by Daisy Ridley, she's done a tremendous job being her, even though a lot of people say that the characters are rather clunky in terms of their voices and being themselves. I kind of think differently on that.
Some of her performance at times were a little just like, ooh, that's the take that they went with. Like, I refuse to believe that that's the best take that they could have gotten of that particular dialogue.
Yeah.
Like the throne room scene when she's actually talking to Snoke. Like, I felt that take was an interesting take that they went for it. I'm surprised that was the best footage that they shot of that particular sequence.
Then we had the situation with Snoke, where I think should we have that in the bad or leave that to the ugly? Because
what's the difference? It's varying degrees at this point, because I felt that was a character that you had has so much potential to be, like,
and importance as well, because he's the
so
thing.
Much potential to be important.
Yeah, he's like, as you always point out with Chekhov's gun, he was a character that kind of spawned all this off. So we needed to know who Snoke
literally
was.
Spawned all this off.
Yeah. So he's the trigger that set all this off, the loaded gun. And what they tried to do was they moved from him to kind of making Luke that trigger, making him useless, and then killing him off without any idea of who he was. And it eliminated any usefulness that they had for him, and it just destroyed any expectation, because people were expecting, who is he? Why is he there? Why is he so beat up? Why is the fact that he looks really damaged? What happened to him? What character could he have been? And they just didn't answer those questions. They just went, get rid of him.
Yeah, no, we're done. We're good.
Yeah, let's just chop him with a lightsaber and then get rid of him.
Yeah. Literally have him fall lifelessly off of his chair.
Yeah, and they kind of done it with comedic
They
effects.
caught him monologue. He got, like, literally, like, this big overarching villain, like the guy who literally engineered the turn of Han and Leia's only son, the heir to the Skywalker bloodline, literally gets caught monologuing like a Bond villain.
And they just did away with him. I felt I was confused by this. I was confused by it. Was I angry? Not so much, but I was more confused.
Confused as to why they even did, like, why even
it's like,
why bring
exactly? Why didn't they
like
just have Ben
you could
turn
literally,
on his own?
like, in Force Awakens, you could have had literally Ben Solo just start talking to, like, go crazy and, like, think that he's talking to Darth Vader.
Why he was talking to the helmet? Yeah,
he's talking to the helmet. Yeah, exactly. You don't have to introduce this overarching bad guy, this huge, like, omnipresent threat, literally 40 feet in the air, towering over everybody, only to just have him be, like, essentially Goldmember. I love the Force.
Yeah, it was a very bad decision. I don't understand. Like, for me, if I was in the production meeting with that and someone said to me, this is what we're going to do, I would have been like, that is the worst idea I've ever heard. It would, one, the fan backlash, which is warranted for this, I believe. It's very, very warranted. In terms of story, it makes no sense because you've just rendered him useless. He's become a big, big plot hole because no one knows why he was there in the first place, what
No
use he had.
motivation. Like they literally say that Snoke is the reason why Ben turned. Don't explain why Snoke. Why, how, or who.
Because as well in the original movies they basically said with Vader, and when he sacrificed himself, that was the end of the Sith. But yet
But
this,
yet here's this super powerful guy that can shoot lightning out of his fingers and literally throw Daisy Ridley around lightsaber around the room.
yeah, and basically treat her like she was a ping pong ball.
Literally hold her up like nothing.
Yeah, and they just killed him off like that. That did bug me, and it rendered his character so useless to the point where they, again, no one knows why this happened. No one knows what the reason behind it was, and it's just killed any. And again, the backlash is warranted because it was the worst thing you could do to something that was that big of a threat. I'm not saying you couldn't strike him down, but you at least should have given him his backstory, like that whole.
Ben could have struck him down, but you could have at least explained more
And
about
his intentions and why he did what he did and how he was so powerful and how he manipulated Ben. None of it. None of it at all.
not
They also did another questionable thing by turning Luke into kind of the bad guy here. So they basically took this guy who was the hero and they rendered him into the villain because they had this whole thing where he was afraid of what Ben was becoming and he was going to basically kill him, which Luke would never have done because he redeemed Vader. Why would you
But
have
like
him?
they just said that he saw no hope for it. Like I don't understand why, but like it was at least explained. It just I don't think it wasn't explained fully to the extent. Like
Yeah.
there could have been like a longer flashback of him training Ben. Like
Again, in Snoke's story, it could have literally had Snoke explain how he turned Ben against his uncle. You know, he could have
explain who Snoke was.
Instead, he was like, I can sense this big power. I thought he was going to become something evil. I wanted to end it before it began. And it destroyed.
That's a really fucked up thing to do to your nephew.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, again, it rendered him the bad guy here. And he was like, it was a mistake. Like, banging your wife's sister was probably a mistake.
Kissing your sister is a mistake.
Kissing
Trying to
your
kill your nephew is beyond reproach.
Exactly. The whole context of the situation made no sense. I did like the fact he was angry and bitter. He came to this planet to kind of pass away so he would be the last Jedi. And I loved everything afterwards. Like the fight scene between him and Ben was really interesting.
Oh, I thought that was one of my that was one of my favorite parts.
Yeah.
Like astral projection Luke was I loved it because he looked kind of younger. He was wearing the black tunic.
He was a badass.
Yeah, I don't quite understand how the lightsaber stuff worked if he wasn't actually there.
Yeah, it was again, it was something that needed a bit more exposition. Maybe it's because he was so powerful.
No, I get that. I get because he had shut himself off from the Force and like coming it off just floods back to him, I guess.
I also love the Yoda cameo, by the way.
Yeah, I love that too. Was that puppet Yoda
Puppet
or CG?
Yoda.
Okay, so they went back to puppet Yoda.
Yeah, which I thought was a great choice. I loved like Yoda was mocking him, and he was just like, the books they've been burned, all the history's been gone, and Yoda's like, Reggie, you have page turners. They're
page
not.
turners, they were not. Like Yoda's still a dick from beyond the grave.
Yeah, but that's Yoda for you. I love that.
Yeah. And it's like, you want to burn it down? You want to burn it down? Fine, fucking burn it down. I could conjure fucking lightning from beyond the grave, bitch.
It was very, very.
I almost wanted Alec Guinness to show up too. Like,
well, you probably would have had it Ewan McGregor instead, but still, it was interesting. It was highly enjoyable.
That's really what I was looking for in that scene. Like, you already had one ghost show up, and then Obi-Wan showing up, also doing that, and then maybe even his father showing up too. Like, no, you saved my life. Like, thank you.
Yeah, like all hope isn't lost, you know. And
all hope is lost, exactly. Like,
it kind of gives him the purpose because no matter how much Rey tried to convince Luke to go on their side, he was like, "I'm done with this. You know, there's no hope."
He's like, no, he knew what she was asking for. That's why I kind of like it. Like, he was just like, I don't want to do anything part of it. I don't know what you think is going to happen. I'm not just going to come out here and fight people. Like, that's not something I do anymore.
Yeah. The Jedi made mistakes over their own arrogance, and it kind of alluded to the past mistakes that they made and how Emperor Palpatine basically came in and destroyed everything under their watch. And that's the thing. And it was interesting. And it was the idea of, like, being he was like, let it die.
The Force is still going to be there even without the Jedi or the Sith.
Yeah, and he's like, just let it die. I did like the fact that Snoke alluded to the fact there would always be a more powerful Jedi to fight the powerful Sith. Like, the Sith and the Jedi.
The balance.
Yeah, it's like yin and yang. The balance of the Force will always be there. That was interesting. They should have gone more into it. They didn't. I didn't understand the whole Ben Solo with his shirt off thing. And the Rey.
I like the fact that, though, I mean, I totally ship Rey and Ben so hard, but, like, the weird, awkward flirting stuff. Like, they weren't even on the same planet together, and they still had more chemistry than Anakin Skywalker and Padme.
Yeah. That's because Padme was phoning it in most of the time, and Anakin was...
No, I think that's because Hayden Christensen was a terrible actor.
And also, Anakin was a baby, and the fact that Padme was a pedophile. But still, you like the older ladies. And the whole situation with this as well, kind of, like, the chemistry was there. Adam Driver, I felt he had more of a grasp of who Bear was. He evolved him.
He gave the best performance in that movie.
Yeah, he evolved Ben from being a spoilt brat in the first movie. He was like the worst thing in Force Awakens, in my opinion. And he went from being the worst thing in Force Awakens to the best thing in The Last Jedi. And his whole of, like, she was trying to redeem him. I liked the redemption story and the two of them fighting together and her going, I want to redeem you. We can work together. We can be friends.
And he's just like, no, I'm not doing that. Like,
you're going to...
on this path.
Be my
this is
apprentice.
My path.
Yeah, it's like, be my apprentice. Work with me. We can rule together. And
why are you still holding on to this shit? Like...
But again, for those people who complain about this, like the master and apprentice thing, what happened to Snoke was always going to happen because the apprentice always kills the master.
I just think that was a weird thing to do in the middle of the movie.
No, I agree. Like, without any backstory or anything.
Like, that's
to Snoke.
the finale.
You could have had that happen at the end of the movie as long as you told his story throughout.
Yes.
Like in flashbacks. They totally didn't do that. It's
Not
storytelling.
There needed to be a flashback to explain how, and I hope maybe we get that in 9. I doubt we will because
they've just basically removed him entirely, which is what's annoyed a lot of the fan base because they're like, you have this threat and it's gone.
Yep. No resolution whatsoever. All we have is speculation. Maybe we'll get a book about it.
Yeah, I felt they used a hell of a lot more comedy in this.
And it was funny too. Like, the comedy was funny. You know what? I didn't notice there was no. I've got a bad feeling about this.
Yeah, and he also, when he became the new Supreme Commander, you had that. I forgot what that guy's name is. The one with the red hair. The one who basically took himself way too seriously, but sounded out like he was a panto villain.
Yes.
He was annoying.
A little bit overacting.
Yeah,
some of those Imperial guys. Some of those Imperial officer guys were like, they maybe had to turn down the villain a little bit too much.
Yeah, I felt like they kind of... The problem is you had multiple different angles of acting in this. Everybody wasn't on the same page. You could tell, like, some people were hamming it up too much, where others were being more serious. And in the serious points, it worked. And the reason why Luke's jokes worked a lot more was because he was being the grumpy old man. Does that make sense? Like, he was... Like, you had Rey, who was trying to figure out who she was in comparison to this guy who just wanted to be left alone. And so when funny happened, it was kind of like...
I like that first joke that happened when he just throws the lights over. That was an amazing tension breaker. Like, that's how you break the ice with humor.
Yeah.
Like, the humor was always then just droids saying something funny, or Han Solo stepping on the stick right before he shoots the bike trooper in the back. People hitting their head on the Millennium Falcon.
Or like the comm situation where he's like, we're fine.
Yeah, we're fine. Everyone's fine here.
How are you today? and
lousy conversation anyway.
This movie kind of, it knew what it wanted to be. It hit the beats that it was supposed to hit, but I felt they focused too much on the character, the overarching character arc, than they did on the central story. And I felt the choice to take certain elements and throw them out of the movie without any explanation, unless the third movie becomes so poignant that it explains everything, you've literally rendered your entire story that you're telling useless, because it made the first movie meaningless. Because
it made a lot of key elements of the first movie meaningless. Like Rey's parents. Yeah. Again, they planted those seeds, like her being left and then her parents. They literally show like the ship taking off and flying away. you thought that was going to be like Luke or something like that. It's not. Unless they're doing this deliberately to like continue to throw us off, and they're not going to pay this off just yet. Which even that to me is like a head scratcher. Like, come on, like how are you really going to draw this out for 10 years? This will probably what it will be like 10 years by the time the next
next trilogy. Well, basically, apparently the new trilogy will be starting after this one. So you're probably going to get a I believe after next Christmas is going to be Solo's film.
The Solo film is in May of 2018,
and then we have episode 9 coming up, and that's going to be 2019. Then we'll probably end up getting the Obi-Wan Kenobi movie, which
I want it to be Star Wars Castaway.
So allegedly, you have that, and then it will start the new trilogy, which is going to have nothing to do with the Skywalker family. But I felt with this that the questionable choices they've basically done it, and also the fact that you have another key element of Leia using the Force to kind of get herself back in the show. I didn't have an issue with this. A lot of people complained about this.
I did because like
she's a Force user though. She has.
No, I know. I get that, but like she's no longer with us. So like you're gonna have to pull this Band-Aid off at some point, and I think it's a cop out to just
they will kill her off camera.
Write her out. Well, no, I think you have to do it on camera. Like I think there could have been such.
They're not going to do that. They're not going to bring her back.
I know.
What they'll probably start the next movie with her funeral. Maybe.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think that's what JJ will take a significant time leap, and then she'll just be dead.
And Poe will basically take over the Resistance in a sense. Yet another head scratcher was they eliminated basically the First Order were in control of everything, even though that big planet was destroyed.
It's not that they said they were in control of everything. It's just because they fired off the Starkiller base that blew up the Republic fleet, and essentially the base of the Republic. They could literally just move in and take over the galaxy within weeks, essentially.
But again, there was no exposition. They kind of tried to explain it off.
They just very quickly. She just said, yes, the First Order could move in and take over the galaxy within weeks. Helpless, we need your help.
Yeah, and again, this is where most of the issues came. Now, I loved Hamill's Luke. I loved his disjointed Luke. I loved Rey's evolution as a character. I loved Ben. I felt Finn kind of fell flat in his story, even though he was progressing on his own. But the love story they tried to tell between him and Rose is his love interest.
It's forced, man. Or it feels like they're trying to set up for a love triangle.
Yeah, because he's in love with Rey, and then Rey has something going on with Ben. So
parallelogram.
A love parallelogram. And the problem is, it felt forced. It felt like he was like the whole her trying to kiss him as well. When she saves him,
that felt safe too. Like again, they made you think that he was gonna. They made you feel like he was gonna sacrifice him. I just felt that they were unwilling to do that because again, if this was going to be the Empire Strikes Back of the series, what characters made serious sacrifices for themselves? Like Luke lost a hand. Han Solo ended up frozen in carbonite.
Yeah.
Leia just confessed her love to this guy, and now he's fucking disappeared. Chewbacca just lost his best friend. Like. There was so many. Every single main character really had to give up something. Worst thing that happened to Poe, he got demoted, which he'll probably get back before the next movie. Worst thing to happen to Finn is nothing. Worst thing to happen to Rey, kind of nothing. The only most depressing thing that happened in the biggest sacrifice was the death of Luke Skywalker, or at least the passing on in the physical form of Luke Skywalker.
The biggest issue, another one of the bigger issues, was a character who was supposed to have more of a central point in the movie, and she had some point.
Laura Dern? You're talking about Laura Dern's character?
No, I'm talking about Captain Phasma.
Oh, okay. Gwendolyn Christie. Yeah. Boba. She could have been like the next Boba Fett. Like if they wrote that character really cool, they had really potential.
So poorly, didn't they?
Yeah, she's just kind of there, like wise talking, and maybe they hired her to do the physical stuff because they saw what she could do physically on Game of Thrones. But it's just kind of like if her armor is blast resistant, why don't they just make every stormtrooper armor out of that?
And also the fact that where she you can see her eye and then she falls into death.
The fire.
That's it. Yeah, she's done. It kind of bugged me with this. I felt that they didn't need to go this route with her. I felt like Phasma should have been Finn's kind of antagonist in a sense. Because,
Exactly. Like she's constantly trying to get him to come back to the First Order to either suffer
well,
meet the justice that he did for deserting.
yeah, and they didn't do that. They kind of touched on it in the first film.
In this movie, they literally brought you up to the point of execution, and then Admiral Holdo executes her maneuver, which I'm officially making it be known, crashing a cruiser at light speed into an enemy ship will officially be known as the Holdo maneuver.
And let's talk about Laura Dern for a second. She was a breath of fresh air. She was interesting. It was a bit
It was
confusing.
good to see another. It was good to see another high-profile, or at least a relatively high-profile American actor being it, because it's certainly, don't really necessarily do those things.
It was confusing though, with that whole thing with her and Poe, where she didn't reveal to him what her plan was.
Yeah, she really just could have told him, and it really would have avoided kind of like the unnecessary mutiny storyline that really didn't do anything.
She did the Star Wars version of your girlfriend being angry at you.
Yeah, silent treatment. It's like, I'm not telling you anything.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you anything that's going on. I'm not going to say anything. Just do what I'm doing.
I don't have to tell you anything because I'm in charge.
It made no sense why she did this. There was no intention of doing this, keeping it a secret from him and everybody else. Her acting in it was great, but it made no sense why she did what she did.
Yeah, they didn't have to have a whole mutiny or anything else like that. Like, she literally just could have said, okay, we're on this trajectory, we have to get to this base.
Yeah.
Just gonna basically chase them out, and then at some point in time, like, that could have been like a major thing. Like, we have to do this, we have to get the First Order off of our tail. The only way to do that is to crash the ship at light speed at a relatively close proximity to the planet where we're going to, so we don't have to like send the cruisers out in space for that long.
Or if they had like a First Order plant on the crew, that would have made sense why she wasn't telling anyone anything.
Yeah, or something like that. Like, yeah, she suspects that somebody's a spy or something like that.
Yeah.
But just to have her just like,
they could have had like this weird MacGuffin with it, where they could have basically labeled Poe the spy, even though he wasn't. But they did it as a way to kind of fish the actual spy out.
That could have been an interesting way of doing it.
Because then you're baiting and switching. You're kind of
they certainly didn't have to send Rose and Finn on some
wild
useless
goose chase.
It was literally wild goose chase, and like the weird
just so they can make some basically narrative about humankind and the fact that the rich are profiting off of the poor by creating
both sides of the war. Yeah,
and animals are being hurt and children are being put into slave trade, and it's like, I understand that you wanted to make this social political commentary.
Yeah, no, not in the middle of the Star Wars movie.
No, and you kind of ruined. You wasted people's time by making. If it had some connection to the overall story.
The end. I guess it turns into the end because like they don't really.
Oh, that little child
kid.
Yeah, he reveals to have like force powers.
Yeah.
And I get that, and I understand that, but at the same time, it was like it was out of place. Do you know what I mean? It was totally out of place, and I felt as I was watching it, I was confused as to why they went this way, why they go in this direction, and why did they need it to tell that story? Because that could have just been some random kid in the galaxy somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't feel like they didn't need to like express like, okay, now that there's now hope in the galaxy because these kids ran into actual resistance fighters or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just very, very weird point to try and run. Especially it's a weird thing to try and end on. You end on a shot where
you could have done it like in the salt mines. You could have had one of the resistance fighters have children.
You didn't even have to end. Yeah, exactly. Like they see Luke Skywalker walk through that door or whatever. Like,
yeah. It made you could have done. You've been told that same story without wasting people's time, and I think that's it was time that could have been spent on something else.
Introducing a character that's really not going to have any bearing other than the fact that just people now are going to speculate over what Broom Kid's involvement in the story is now. Why that kid?
I think
that's what I'm calling him. I'm calling him Broom Kid.
They're probably going to be setting up some sort of subplot where he will become the next savior of the universe.
No, at the end of episode 9, Rey's going to pass on what she learned, and those kids from Canto Bight are going to be some of her students.
Again, it's unique in its sense, but at the same time, it didn't need to happen. So you remove the focal point of the story by doing that, by putting that in for no reason. Now, going on from that, you have all these key plot elements, and you had the situation that happened with Leia, as we talked about. But then you also had them killing off characters in a swath. Do you agree with that? Do you think them killing off non-essential characters was a right thing to do, or do you feel like it was just a waste?
I mean, fits overall with the sort of underlying theme of the movie, which was killing off the past.
Yeah,
So yeah, I guess, but I mean, Admiral Akbar wasn't really that essential. He was a character that
it's a trap.
probably, yeah, exactly. He became one of the really first viral Star Wars memes. Like,
So,
but
hmm.
I mean, I guess because it sets the tone for the Resistance to really be in shambles. I think that is the biggest sacrifice that they made. Is the Resistance is down to like a handful of people on the Millennium Falcon.
And now they're going to build it up because they're the spark that's lit to take
Yeah.
down the First Order.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's go on the fan backlash, because we covered the bad and the ugly pretty much in the same swath, in a sense, as they did with killing off all those resistance fighters. The fan backlash. Now, fans have been going insane to the point we had one fan go on start a change.org petition to have the movie removed from canon. Do you think it's warranted?
No, no, it's not because I guess it's a movie. People like this isn't like that egregious of a violation. Like I said, I didn't. There are stuff that I didn't like about the movie, but I don't think it was such an egregious violation to quote unquote the holy writ of Star Wars that it should be expunged from history and we have to have another movie to replace it. No, I just think it was an interesting and bold storytelling choice by the director and writers, which it probably to me strikes me as writers not wanting to compromise on their ideals.
I think a bold and flawed storytelling attempt.
Yes,
In a sense,
yeah, because people were, I guess, so attached to whatever idea that they were pitching in the writers' room. Whoever was in charge didn't want to upset anybody and just tried to do everything that everybody did.
And Disney
Like,
also gave them a lot of free reign, I think, as well on this. Ryan Johnson was explaining this was a movie he wanted to make, and I felt that they were like, yeah, this is great when they saw it, but then they didn't understand that this probably would. Like, I'm wondering if they actually tested this in front of audiences.
I don't think they did because that would have came out like, oh wow, this tested not well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think people would have been really angry with it. For me, I think like you're gonna like it, you're gonna hate it. This movie is pretty much gonna be the Marmite of the Star Wars universe. I don't think it's as bad as the prequel trilogy.
You mentioned Marmite. Our Marmite enthusiast friend Dave Wade is actually the complete opposite. He loves the prequels because he feels that that's what Star Wars was, but yet he did not like Force Awakens and he did not like this.
I felt that the problem is with this, if you watch this back to back with Force Awakens and you had no prior knowledge to the Star Wars universe, I don't think you would like it. I think as part of that narrative, it still holds as a good movie. It's not a bad movie. It's not the worst movie ever made. It's a good movie. It still has a narrative. It is very well done in terms of character arcs, but in terms of a full Star Wars movie, it's very, very flawed in terms of its execution because so much was trying to be accomplished in such a short time span that it just ruined the overall story. Plus, there were choices that were made that weren't being compromised on that violated previous canon. As someone who's a fan of the series, will I watch this again after my second viewing? Probably not. And for me, if I didn't, I do want to see how this ends. I want to see how they recover the fumble in a sense. But at the same time, if I'm still disappointed in in this, I'm probably just going to end up watching episode 4, 5, and 6 anyway, and that's it. You can take that out of this and just remain with 4, 5, and 6 if that's how you want to see the movies, and you're not happy with the prequels, and you're not happy with the continuation of the Star Wars trilogy. You don't have to watch the rest of the sequels. You can just watch episode 4, 5, and 6. Fan backlash and the vocal anger and venom that this movie's received, it's ridiculous on my part. And I think as a filmmaker myself, I felt that they could have made a lot of better choices, but it's neither here or there. Now, how would we fix this? Like for me, in order to make it a coherent movie, how would we fix it? I have an idea, but I want to hear your opinion.
Ap- okay, apart from explaining backstories for Snoke, Rey's parents, unless this is just like they're planning it out to really stick it in that maybe she is Luke's kid. Apart from that, I would have gotten rid of the Canto Bite storyline, figured out something. They could have done something like Benicio del Toro could have just been some guy who worked for the Resistance that, like you said, was a spy or something like that.
It would have made more sense, yeah.
Yeah, or like was just the guy that they turned to, like this, like the quirky rogue, the guy with the stuttering problem, who not a lot of people thought had this potential, and then screws him over to save his own skin because he realizes it. Like they didn't have to go out of their way
to make that point.
And then, yeah, exactly. I felt that they could have really defined clearly what they were doing, and like with the plot better, like
and the balance in the Force.
Yeah. Or like, more specifically, why they were leading the First Order. I keep on wanting to call them the Empire. Yeah. Why they were leading on the First Order through essentially like a very slow boat chase, essentially.
Like, for me, it was like with Luke, they could have easily said that this was going to happen, that there was always going to be balance in the Force. Dark was always going to be there to complement light, and he was awaiting for the next darkness to return, but he didn't expect it to be his own nephew. Do you know what I mean? They didn't need to go the route that they did, and I felt the getting rid of the entire casino scene would have helped as well. Cutting that huge chunk out, giving more exposition to Finn trying to find his purpose, because I felt they missed the boat where they could have, like, he often being able to handle the lightsaber, because I think they did, J.J. Abrams did that little plot twist because everyone thought he was going to be the new lightsaber wielder, and then they kind
all of a sudden it's way.
Yeah, it was kind of their way to kind of bait and switch. I would have loved to see him come out of it going, I don't know who I am, I thought I was this Jedi and I'm not this Jedi. But there's this woman that I care about and she's missing. I need to find her, and that would have made more sense. And then he can build up and find his purpose. And like, I don't need Jedi powers to take these people down. I've got my own guts. I've got my own gumption. I am a rebel, so to speak. And they kind of didn't do that. Instead, they gave him this weird love interest who had no purpose. She served no purpose. And I felt bad for her as well, because Rose was an interesting character. She was well acted out. I just felt she was
her
useless.
intent, like originally her intentions were very clear. Like she lost her sister, all this other stuff.
I also felt she didn't mourn enough for that as well. I felt that she should have mourned more for her sister, and it should have been about her trying to redeem her sister's memory and legacy, that she didn't die for nothing.
Yes.
Yeah, but they really didn't do that at all. They kind of just shoehorned her in as kind of a love interest for Finn for no reason. I would have either eliminated her character or moved her into a different plot point. Maybe even had her assist Poe to the point where she becomes like the secondary leader of the Resistance or some shit. Her relationship with Finn had no bearing. Then
it seemed out of left field, like all of a sudden, just because these characters have been through this little bit of event, and again, unless they're setting up for the love parallelogram between Rey, Finn, Ben, and Rose, we'll see.
Because like most movies that came before it as well, it's a space opera, so you're gonna have plot points like this in there, like they did with Luke, Han, and Leia, until we found out that she was his sister, which made everything that came before it very awkward.
It's a little weird.
Space incest. What happens in space stays in space. The whole First Order chasing their ship till they ran out of fuel was stupid.
Yeah, I felt that, like, if that had been the plan all along, like, hey, we have to get them, lead them on this chase to this point, and then I'm going to turn around the ship and then crash into them, and that may take all the ships out while you guys get to here. If that had been the explained plan from the jump, like, that would have made way more sense than just like, all right, well, let's keep going, and then eventually all these ships are just going to run out of fuel, and we're going to sacrifice them anyway.
Yeah. It was like they kept trying to raise the stakes, but they didn't raise them. They just made it look... in my opinion, it made the Rebel Alliance look like a bunch of idiots.
Very, very much so, yes.
Yeah.
Or at least incompetent in command.
Very much. And that's annoying because they've done this before, and having someone like Leia be that incompetent makes no sense to me.
Well, she wasn't in command because this was after the Mary Poppins scene, which is how I'm referring to it.
That I think that would have made the movie from good to great in that decision. I do think though with the backlash, I don't think the planned trilogy with Ryan Johnson is going to happen.
Well, no, JJ was always going to take over 9. Was there a plan for Ryan Johnson to take over his own trilogy? Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think that's going to. After the fan backlash from this, I think Disney's probably going to be scratching their heads, going, "Yeah, this is not going to happen."
We like what you did, Ryan, but the people really won't be happy if we say you're coming back.
Hmm.
So, sorry. Hey, do you want to make a Star Wars story? Do you want to make a
They'll probably move
Obi-Wan
him to like a
in the
Marvel
desert?
movie or something like that. That's what they
Yeah,
usually do.
right.
Yeah, or one of their live action Disney movies. Our issue here, this is how we feel this movie could have been redeemed. Hopefully, they do a director's cut. Maybe they can go back and do some reshoots and fix the film.
Well,
I don't.
that's what I hear. I heard like Ryan Johnson has saying his director's cut is actually the ultimate version of the film. Like
They
what?
always say that, and that's never the case.
It's true. It's very true.
I hope to see what happens on that.
Yeah, this just makes me think that this movie was 2.5 hours long. His director's cut has got to be 3 hours.
What would you feel like out of if you could give this movie a score? What would you give it?
Three, anywhere to 3.5 out of 5, depending on my whatever my mood is at the time. It wasn't great by any means, but it wasn't the worst Star Wars movie I've ever seen. I think
felt
Attack
it
of
was
the
more. It was a lot better than the initial Force Awakens, in my opinion.
I wouldn't go that far because I mean, I guess like when I came out of Force Awakens, I felt like reinvigorated. Like my Star Wars cup has now been refilled. Like I'm ready to go. Let's go.
Yeah.
Now it's like, oh, what are you gonna do now?
Yeah, that this is they've kind of shot themselves in the foot here.
It really the plot to me like almost kind of mirrored a reverse Empire Strikes Back in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like they're escaping one place to get to another place to fight this big battle where they have to escape again.
Yeah. Which is a shame. And did you notice at the end that when Rey was opening the drawer that there were Jedi texts in
The books, yeah, means she stole the books from the temple.
Yeah. Even when Luke was trying to burn them, I think Yoda
Yeah.
might have known this. And again, I would love if they had Puppet Yoda come back. I've got a funny feeling. I don't know if Hamill's coming back because he wasn't
might.
very happy.
No, he's publicly like, I do not like how they wrote Luke Skywalker. Like,
Yeah, because I remember he was initially excited to return, but then afterwards he was like, "Yeah, this isn't good." But it's and I think because he voiced his opinion publicly, I've got a funny feeling Disney are just gonna be like, "Don't bring him back."
or if they do, it's literally just gonna be like, all right, Mark, here's what you're gonna do. You're not gonna you don't need you to do much. We just need you to act on a sound stage, and we'll CGI you to make you look like a ghost.
Yeah.
Have somebody else play his performance, and they'll just do that digital de-aging thing that they did, like with Tarkin in Rogue One.
Possibly. Which it's a shame, and I think in terms of the movie, it did have a lot of potential. It had a lot of potential to kind of be the secondary to the magnum opus. That's going to be the third movie.
Got a lot of cleaning up, man. That's all I know.
Yeah, they've got a lot of there's a lot of damage control and a lot of cleanup they need to do to kind of fix this. But in terms of overall, I would give it a 3 out of 5. But it would be for me, I probably would not pick this up again. If I was doing a Star Wars marathon, I probably would watch it, but it would be something I'd have in the background.
I think I need at least one more theatrical cinematic viewing to really get. I think a lot of my opinion was influenced on this movie because I just didn't really have that great of a weekend when I went to go into it. So it was kind of like the one thing on the weekend that I was trying to do right after literally everything I tried to do that weekend had gone wrong, and
Yeah.
there's still some lingering resentment from other things that had happened this weekend that affected me.
A lot of people say the same thing. I don't think it's that. I think it literally is going to see it and you expect it. Because it's like with anything. When you expect, like the initial movie, The Force Awakens set it up really well. There were flaws in The Force Awakens as well, but it set it up to the point where people were like, what's Luke gonna do? How is Rey gonna,
Who is this Snoke guy?
Yeah, who is Rey? Who is Snoke? Why did Ben turn? And having a movie that did not answer any of those questions
In fact, deliberately went out of its way not to answer them, or was not like
and
was Bill
dismissed them.
Belichickian
Yeah,
at least.
it kind of
Yeah.
dismissed them to the point where the fans were. And again, I can see why people are pissed, why people are very angry with this and are annoyed with the presentation. I do hope that they do take stock to the fan backlash and they don't just dismiss it, because I think Ryan Johnson's dismissed it. Like, well, it's my movie, because it's kind of what he said. It's like, it's my movie. I made a movie. And if we just listened to the fans, we would never make proper movies.
Yeah, suck my dick from the back.
Pretty much. And it was like, okay, I get what you were doing. I understand why you were doing it, but at the same time, you've got to redeem this franchise. You've got to redeem this new trilogy. If you don't, it's always going to be marred as the trilogy that people hated.
You made the Empire. You made the Phantom Menace of this. You could have made the next Empire Strikes Back, but you may have just made the next Phantom Menace.
Yeah, and it's
which I don't think he did. I just think there were some questionable story choices.
I don't think he did on purpose.
No, because he definitely tried to like be Empire Strikes Back, but ultimately you were just gonna fail in that regard.
Yeah, because I think he wanted to make a movie that he wanted to make, and it's very similar to Fan Four Stick. And I'm not saying this movie is as bad as Fan Four Stick, but you had a director who wanted to make a movie they wanted to make, who was famous for making movies that they wanted to make, making some bad choices with characters that are very beloved. And when you do that, you're going to get fan backlash.
You mean Fantastic Four?
Fan Four Stick.
No, I thought you were talking about Fantastic Four.
No, I was talking about Fan Four Stick and Chronicle.
Oh, okay. I had no idea what any of those.
The director of Chronicle made Fan Four Stick, which was the worst Fantastic Four movie ever, because it was a clustered mess. But I'm not comparing this to that. But I'm saying it's very similar in terms of, you have a director who wanted to make a movie they wanted, fans got upset, and then sit there and went, well, the director's cut would have been a lot better, and then told everybody to like just don't critique it and just enjoy it for what it is, and then people got even more infuriated. But I do feel that the fan backlash is unwarranted. I think people need to stop, need to think about it, need to digest it a bit more. As a movie, as a standalone movie, it's okay. As a Star Wars movie, it's okay. But I do agree that they didn't do what they should have done with this movie and allowed it to bring about the story and the narrative. But as a character movie driven by character arcs, it was okay.
I think it was a good Ryan Johnson movie, just probably not the best Star Wars movie, because I could tell there's a lot of shots that he wanted in, like that very first shot of all the ships leaving the planet where it just goes straight down. Like that's a Ryan Johnson shot. That's not a Star Wars shot.
Maybe this may drive Disney to kind of micromanage, which I hope doesn't happen.
I think Kathleen Kelly needs to be more Kevin Feige and like, say, hey, this is where you're going to end. This is where the last movie ended. This is where we want you to end up.
Yeah.
Every place however you get there, is up to you. But as long as you hit these checkpoints before you get there, we're all good.
You know what I would say? I now have a comparison I think would be warranted. It was what the Avengers Age of Ultron was to the Avengers movies.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's literally a big misstep in something that they fumbled on that they could pick back up. I do think with J.J. Abrams or a new director, whoever takes it on board Episode 9, if they can pick up the fumble and move forward with it, I think we're going to be fine. But who knows? We thought we were going to get some answers. We got a lot more questions. Let us know in the comments below, guys, if you enjoyed the movie, what you thought of it, if you liked it, if you hated it. Please leave the language and try not to argue with people and get aggressive about it. This is an opinion, and with every opinion, we try to look at both sides and what worked and what didn't work. Big thank you to Brandon Ligon for coming on the show.
And thank you for having me, sir.
Oh, I couldn't do this without you. And giving us his opinion and his sides to the story. And me and Brandon are pretty much in agreement of what we felt wasn't grasped in this, which is great. As a Star Wars fan myself, I Can't wait to see where they go from here, but they do have a lot of work to do. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to see more from this channel, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share. And this is Michael Burham for Brandling, and of course saying that we'll see you again at the movies. See you soon.
Meow.